Hello everyone in the gift community, I'm Dave Armet, and I thought it'd be fun to try to rev up some grad pod discussion, this time maybe relative to the thoracic spine. The town that we have our office, there's a strong college rowing program. The women's crew team actually just won their third straight national championship. So with all the involvement of the rowers in this program, we tend to see a fair number of their athletes with their main sort of risk factor or symptomatic presentation of low back pain because of the sport. So we've had a chance to sort of learn a lot about a sport over the years that I, coming into it, I knew nothing about. So what I have for you today are some clips of some of these women rowers sort of in the boat, in action, demonstrating some pretty dysfunctional spinal mechanics. And as I've talked to the coaches, they're quite fascinated by some of the type 1 and type 2 mechanics that we strive to look at. So we'll see some examples of that and then see how we've tried to kind of use our understanding of that to maybe shift our own focus in how we approach sort of the non-rower, the general person with low back pain, whether it's from bending or lifting type mechanics. So we'll see what you all have to think about that. Thanks.
In this picture we see 4 women in the boat. 2 have their oars on the left side of the boat, which is port. The other 2 have it on the right side of the boat, which is starboard. For those of you not familiar with crew terminology, but the first girl is a perfect example of the fact that she's going into type 1 mechanics. We can see her right shoulder a little bit lower than her left, creating right side bending. But as she puts her oar in the water on the left side of the boat, she's trying to get left rotation. So she's got left rotation, right side bending, type 1 mechanics. Ideally, from a technique standpoint, what the coaches look for is more of a type 2 mechanic, where her right shoulder would be slightly elevated compared to the left, creating some left side bending, allowing left rotation as she gets her oar in the water. And it would be that left side bending component that helps create some angulation so that she can get the oar down into the water. So we can kind of look at some of the other girls in the boat, especially the girl in the back, and see pretty similar mechanics. She's in a left side bent position as she's trying to get her oar into the right side of the water. So again, she's in left side bending and right rotation type 1 when she should be defaulting to type 2. So we started to realize that something goes on, whether it's the speed of this motion or just habit of movement, but they have a hard time sort of going into that type 2. And if we felt like it gave us an opportunity to kind of help potentially with the training of this motion, and give the coaches again another avenue to explore instead of just harping on telling them to do something, sort of give them the tools to sort of learn how to do it more effectively. This clip shows another similar example. You'll have to excuse their goofy outfits. I think these were the freshmen and they had to dress like athletes from other sports. So there's some field hockey goggles there and I think a softball uniform, and anyway. So same idea, especially this girl in the light blue shirt. We can really see how left rotated she gets, but also right side bend, really looking at that angulation of her shoulders. Ideally, once again, we should see left rotation and left side bending to help her get her oar into the water. Similar idea with the girl in the red. The first 2 girls are better, but again, just interesting ways to kind of see the sport in action and the dysfunctional mechanics of type 1 when there should be defaulting to type 2, and a possible risk factor for driving extra force potentially into the lumbar spine, when the lumbar spine might now have to be the thing that compensates going into excessive type 2 to make up for the fact that the lumbar spine, or make that the thoracic spine wasn't doing the motion it was supposed to. So here's some examples of one of our therapists working with one of the crew athletes to try to do some training to kind of get her going into type 2. We also really got a lot of bang for the idea of using the head as a driver. Seemed to really make a big change in kind of getting that mid to upper thoracic contribution, which we really also felt like was so important for these athletes. So this is Brittany Capiello's patient. Brittany is a gift fellow from 2009, and she did a nice job with this girl in the cage here. And again, just some different angles that you can kind of see, that driving into that left side bending, which seemed to be the component that they had most problems, kind of sort of having to contribute to the motion. So, not forgetting about the rotational piece, we can use the head as a driver there as well. Again, we can just see that left side bending, left rotation occurring with the hands pre-positioned. And sitting, again, we felt like obviously simulates the positioning of the sport. Here she's getting a little more of a drive, adding the arm with the head. And this was a neat technique that she did as well, having some stability, but obviously just a pillowcase in her hand, sliding down the rail. I think in some ways you can almost start to see her break down a little bit here, trying to get left side bending and trying to pre-position into left rotation, but we almost see her wanting to kind of go back into a little bit of right rotation, it looks like. So, we're kind of maybe at her threshold here, and either we need to, pre-position her differently or, slow her down or change, tweak something different to find some more success. And again, just another nice example of what Britt was doing with her left side bending and left rotation motion, still letting that head really help to drive this motion. Same idea, just now letting the cord sort of help be the driving force into the left side bending, pre-position using the pole as our point of stability to accentuate some left rotation. And then also this one's a nice one, and really again shows that left rotation, left side bending component, arm positioning, somewhat similar to what she should be into the boat. So again, it feels familiar to her, sounds like something her coach is trying to harp on. But we've kind of given her the tools to learn the motion proprioceptively, obviously from a strength and mobility standpoint as well. So just some different ways to see that in action.
All right, so hopefully even if you've never even seen a crew athlete and maybe don't even live near a body of water, you at least found that a little bit interesting. But we kind of were able to maybe use that thought process of how we approach this crew athlete and start thinking about the regular population that we see as well. A strategy that we utilize frequently with lower back pain is more that bottom-up approach, making sure the hips are cleared, allowing better hip mobility to reduce that strain on the lower back. But it really got us thinking about the thoracic contribution, sort of the top-down approach to lower back pain. If the back could handle it, obviously if they were so acute, bottom-up might be a better approach. But for those times that we need to sort of look at top-down. And like a lot of us, perhaps, I will admit this myself, we can, even in the world of applied functional science, we can still kind of get stuck sometimes in our treatment ruts, our things that we feel comfortable with, our go-to kind of things. And sometimes I think we kind of need that ability to sort of break out of our ruts and go a little bit deeper. So our way of assessing thoracic type 1 and type 2 motion is oftentimes more in sort of that overhead type of reach, the opposite lateral overhead reach to get type 1 there. Same thing here with type 2. And again, whether we saw dysfunction or some limitation, it can give us a lot of information. But sometimes we might see that it looked good, and we think, oh, no problem. But I think one that we just don't commonly, at least for me and the therapists in our office, we weren't as commonly looking at were the type 1 and 2 motions where we can kind of have that lower type of reach. So here's my right side bend, right rotation motion coming here, and also then getting right rotation and left side bending occurring this way. And another element that came into play as we looked at these athletes, and I also think is a factor for the general population, is the speed at which we do it. Sometimes slow and control, we might look at something and say, oh no, that looks great. But again, speed of life, a quick motion, what do they default to with speed as a tweak? So just something to think about as we evaluate our patients, and hopefully something for all of you to kind of weave into the fabric of your thought processes a little bit as well. And looking at some of these motions too, I think oftentimes for myself, sometimes as I might have somebody reach down here, it sort of forces a lot of hip motion. So maybe I was or wasn't seeing as much as I wanted to out of the thoracic spine. Felt like, that they weren't sort of giving me the, what I wanted. So we started to kind of also play around with having people sit. And again, especially for people that sit at a desk all day or drive, almost taking their hips a little bit out of the mix. Again, if their lower backs can handle it, going top down, but a way to almost, integratively isolate that thoracic spine so we can kind of lock that pelvis onto a seated surface a little bit and then maybe be able to see a little more contribution. And I think it's a huge factor when we look at the bending mechanics of people in terms of what that spine does. So again, just being able to see it maybe in a sitting position a little bit more effectively with hips taken out of the mix. But also I think that speed element and also a load. I think that's another huge one. Sometimes somebody might look fine, in some motion when it's just their hands as the driver, but do things start to break down a little bit also when we put that load in. So different thoughts from us here at Williamstown PT, and again, ways of taking something like the crew athlete example, and again, just opening up our minds to kind of dive a little bit deeper. So I hope everyone enjoyed it. Hope it maybe sparked some thoughts for all of you. But again, I'd love to hear what you guys think about this, or just examples of what you found in terms of your own thoracic work, top-down approaches, different ideas. So if anybody wants to put up a video, that'd be great. Post, whatever. Again, we'll try to keep them short. Hopefully this is going to come in a little under 10 minutes, so not that big of a time commitment. So I hope everybody's doing great, and hope to catch up with some of you down the road. All right, have a good one.